let's take a deeper look at the 5 pillars of Islam. So the first pillar, Shahada, which is the creed. This is basically when somebody converts to the Islamic faith. They must profess in Arabic, because it is the language of Muhammad, that Allah is the one true God and Muhammad is his prophet. This must be said aloud, and basically it's a creed or a profession of faith. Salat, prayer. Muslims must pray 5 times a day. Once at dawn, once at mid-morning, once at noon, once at mid-afternoon, and then once again at dusk. When praying, Muslims must always face towards the holy city of Mecca. Swam, fasting. This takes place usually during the month of Ramadan. Ramadan in the Islamic calendar occurs in the 9th month. This year, 2020, that month, or that Ramadan period, falls between mid-April and mid-May. Okay, Hajj. Hajj is modeled after Muhammad's trip from Medina back to his hometown of Mecca. The Hijrah is what it was called when Muhammad brought his followers from Medina back to Mecca. And all devout Muslims must, at least once in their life, attempt a Hajj, or a pilgrimage to Mecca. Zakat. Zakat is almsgiving, or giving to the needy in the ulama, which is the community of the faithful. Okay, so Muhammad rises to great power. Within the course of about 20 years, 25 years, he is able to accumulate tens of thousands of followers, possibly even approaching 100,000. Muhammad dies in 632. His successor, there's a term given to the successor, and that is called caliph or caliph. And basically, this person is referred to as the civil and religious leader or ruler of Islam. Basically, it's kind of like a king that also has the rule of, say, the Pope, both religious as well as civil or social rule. It's important to make note of that. In Islam, there is a social component, basically a governing structure, and the caliph is at the head of that social structure. Okay, the Ottoman conquest of 1517, we still see the term caliph or caliph being used in Egypt. It is used in Baghdad until 1258. It is actually finally abolished by the Ottoman sultans in 1924 by a leader named Ataturk. Okay, so basically what happens is, as soon as Muhammad dies, there's a power struggle, and his right-hand man, whose name is Abu Bakr, he assumes the role of caliph. He is technically the first caliph. Although it's more of an informal designation, he begins to collect taxes from the ulama, or the community of the faithful. He begins to try to convert those that have not already taken Islam as their primary religion. The problem is that a lot of the tribes that had not previously prescribed to Muhammad, or once Muhammad dies, they decide that they don't want to pay taxes. They don't feel it's necessary. They feel like Abu Bakr is not the rightful successor. So what we see as soon as Muhammad dies is we already start to see a bit of a division. Those that support Abu Bakr and the paying of taxes, and those that do not. And out of this comes a sporadic series of battles called the Ridda Wars. And basically, it's multiple people saying that they are the rightful successor to the Prophet Muhammad. So eventually, Abu Bakr is able to rise to power, but there is not a unified consolidation of Islam. There are still rival groups that feel that Abu Bakr is not the rightful caliph, and that will continue past his death. So as the Muslims begin to spread throughout the Middle East, because again, not only do we have a power vacuum after Muhammad dies, we also have the decline of the Byzantines and the Sassanids, the two ruling empires that were very, very large in the Middle East and the eastern part of Asia. And we'll take a look at a map here in just a second. But the Arabs, because of the fact they kind of fall in between the two empires, and in particular along that Arabian Peninsula where it's very, very dry, and not a lot of people want to settle, they have the ability to start branching out and spreading the religion. And at first it starts slowly, and then it gradually takes off. Basically, these trips to convert people are called jihads. We, in the modern age, and especially in the Western world, we view the jihad as something unfortunately associated with terrorism. But the true and the original meaning of the word jihad is to go out into the world and spread the word of Muhammad and Allah. And basically, it's an attempt to gain converts. It's a sacred journey in the Islamic faith. So the more people they convert, obviously equals more taxes. Again, like I had said, you have the Sassanids to the northeast and to the east of the Arabian Peninsula. You have the Byzantines directly to the north and to the west and to the southwest. The Byzantines basically control all of the area of North Africa, including Egypt, and pretty much most of the coastal areas of the Mediterranean Sea. The Sassanids, however, are based in the original Persian Empire, in and around Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, those areas. Okay, so a couple quick terms that are good to know. The Copts. The Copts are a sect of the Byzantine Empire in which they kind of form it's a Christian faith, and we see a lot of Coptic churches popping up throughout, especially southern Egypt, down into Somalia, present-day Somalia, and Ethiopia. Ethiopia in particular adopts this Christian Coptic church as their primary faith. So again, we see some resistance to any type of intrusion of Islam into these areas. The Nestorians are actually on the northern border of Syria and the southern border of Iraq. And the Nestorians are also Christian converts, and they are kind of pockets of resistance to the Islamic faith. So it's important to take note of that. Okay, moving on. Again, this is a rendering of the Islamic armies trying to capture Sicily in the 9th century. And basically it shows a collection of Arabs trying to forcefully spread the word of Allah to the Sicilians, who, again, because of their proximity to Italy and Rome, highly Catholic at the time. So again, there was resistance. Okay, so let's take a look here at the expansion of Islam. This map shows us how it spread. So if you look at the purple area, this is the original area where Muhammad had spread the religion in his later years. All right, and then under the first 4 caliphs, which is the period of time through 632 to 660, 661, we see it being expanded up into the coastal areas that were originally controlled by the Byzantines, all the way down into Egypt, again running into the Copts. As they move north, they run into those Nestorians. But you can see they're fairly successful at spreading Islam throughout the Sassanid Empire. You can see right here, this is the center of the Sassanid Empire. And then finally, under the Umayyads, which is the following large caliphate, they expand all the way into Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even all the way over into the Maghreb region of Africa, which is right here, and also into Spain. And you can see they actually established quite a presence in Portugal and Spain. We have 2 Catholic houses called Castile and Aragon. You may have heard of those names before, but those houses are predominantly Catholic, and they end up running into some conflict with the remnants of the Umayyad, and we'll talk about them in a minute. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the split. It's very important to understand that the groundwork for this schism or split in the Islamic faith is laid even before Muhammad dies. But at the time of Muhammad's death in 632, the schism or the split really starts to take shape under Abu Bakr, and then as we move into the second and the third caliph, Uthman is the third caliph, who is a direct descendant of Muhammad, and he is murdered. You're going to see a trend here. A lot of these guys get murdered or assassinated. Uthman is murdered, and then Ali takes over as the caliph. Ali was the cousin and the son-in-law of Muhammad, and he is considered to be the fourth caliph. But he's exceptionally important because of the fact that because he is accepted by the ulama, or the community of the faithful, is because he's accepted by a majority of the ulama. He does get that title as caliph, or caliph, but there's a couple tribes in particular, the Umayyad tribe. Remember we talked about the Quraysh tribe, which was Muhammad's tribe. The Umayyad tribe was a neighboring tribe, and they did not like the idea of Ali taking over. Whether that was a power struggle or maybe it was they felt they were actually the true heirs to take over Muhammad's dynasty. It's hard to say, but fighting ensues. And at the Battle of Siffin, the Umayyads are defeated, but Ali begins to lose support, and the Umayyads actually kind of gain a little bit of ground, and that's going to cause further division in the Islamic faith. So Muhammad actually has two sons, Husayn and Hussein, and Ali is actually going to be assassinated in 661. Hassan actually makes a deal at the time of his father's assassination, and even though he is technically the rightful heir to the position of caliph, there is as an act of appeasement or an act of trying to say, hey, let's stop our fighting, Husayn renounces or abdicates the title of caliph, and he abdicates to the Umayyad tribe, in particular the leader of the Umayyad tribe at the time, whose name is Muawiyah, and we'll take a look at him in just a second. Unfortunately for Ali's sons, this is not going to bode well. The deal was this: Hassan agreed to abdicate the throne if the Umayyads did not name a successor after Muawiyah dies or is, in this case, killed. So Hussein is the younger brother of Hassan, and he is the grandson of Muhammad, as well as son of Ali. So he does have direct blood relation. So when Hassan renounces the caliphate, that line of Ali's children kind of loses the claim to the caliphate. Well, Hussein is trying to rally supporters to try to regain the caliphate, but he does not have many. And what we see the Battle of Karbala in 680. And this battle really solidifies the split between Sunni and Shia. So let's take a look at that. So Muawiyah calls himself caliph in 661. Ali is not yet dead at this point, and it causes a lot of internal conflict. You have one group that supports Muawiyah. In particular, they are leaning towards the Sunni sect or the Sunni split. The Sunnis will basically make up most of the Umayyad Caliphate, and moving forward, the Umayyads will be Sunni in nature. They will not be Shia. Shia are the descendants of Ali. Shia today make up a very small percentage of the Islamic community, somewhere between 5 and 10% of all of Muslims in the world. The Sunni, on the other hand, make up almost entirely the rest. There are a few smaller sects of Sufis and other mystic groups that are not a majority of the Islamic population. So again, the Battle of Karbala, you need to watch this video if you get you get a chance, it's on YouTube, and it's embedded into the PowerPoint. It's called The Story of Karbala, and it's actually really sad how um, Hussein and his family are basically executed by the Umayyads to kind of eliminate any threat to their power. All right, I'll let you guys watch that on your own. So basically, the Umayyads begin to push west. They establish a capital at Damascus. Damascus is part of Syria. It's a large city in Syria near the Mediterranean, not on the Mediterranean, but close. They basically said that Mecca is the #1 holy city of the religion, even though previous to this, Mecca and Medina had held fairly equal significance to the faithful. And eventually, their spread will go all the way up into southern France. They will be defeated in 732 at Poitiers, which is located right there near the Pyrenees. All right, moving on. So let's talk about the Dhimmi, or the people of the book. People that were converted to the Islamic faith are called Malawi, and they are forced by the Umayyads to pay taxes. However, they, if they pay their taxes, they are actually able to live in a certain amount of peace and certainty, being a non-Muslim in a Muslim caliphate. That tax is called the jizya, and this tax was levied on people that lived inside the caliphate but were not Muslim, in particular Jews and Christians. But there could have been other groups of people. For example, in Persia, that would have been Zoroastrians. You could have had a few Bedouin people that had not subscribed to the Islamic faith. That would have been they would have been more along the lines of your pastoral animism and naturalism and ancestral worship type religions that we've talked about previous. Okay, the Dhimmi, the people of the book. Now, we talked about the fact that Judaism and Christianity were Abrahamic religions, and what that means is they stem from the stories of Abraham. Christianity and Islam are two religions that come after Judaism. Judaism is arguably the oldest monotheistic religion in the world. Zoroastrianism is a really, really close second. Both are around today. Obviously, Judaism is far more widespread than Zoroastrianism. But as the Umayyads begin to spread farther to the east, farther to the north, and to a degree farther to the west, they start to apply this concept of the people of the book, or the Dhimmi, to other peoples beyond Christians and Jews, because Christians and Jews share that Abrahamic connection. Old Testament, first 5 books of the Torah, that sort of thing, all stem back to the stories of Abraham and the Hebrews, as well as the Quran. The Quran has direct connections to Abraham and the stories of the early Hebrew people. So as they begin to move, they start to incorporate more Dhimmi, or people of the book. They have to change their approach to include Zoroastrians and Hindus, even though their religions do not stem from the Abrahamic religions. Okay. This just shows us the Dhimmi studying and learning under the Islamic faith. And again, this is not something that was uncommon in the Umayyad dynasty. There was a lot of tolerance for other religions, so long as you paid that jizya. All right, so real quick analysis of family and gender roles. Originally, as the Umayyad takeover, they are very intent on trying to spread kind of a more strict interpretation of Islam and application of Islam into their people. But as they expand, they also have to, in order to continue to govern these new peoples that they're consuming as they spread, they have to loosen up a bit. Some of those traditional customs that prevail, a bride price. Basically, this is a concept where women that are married to a man receive some kind of a payment That payment can be in actual some kind of monetary gold, silver, whatever the currency was or is at the time. Or it could be in land, it could be in animals, it could be in crops. And the woman actually had the ability to keep that, or she could give it to her family. And it was up to her. The Hadith is basically a collection of the traditions of the Islamic people, in particular Muhammad and the first caliphs. Most of the recordings of the Hadith were carried out by women. And women also, as the Umayyad dynasty begins to, move into the future, women are allowed to educate themselves. They're allowed to practice law, and they're allowed to involve themselves in commerce. We do not see a lot of veiling or veiled faces at this time. Basically, women enjoy greater freedom under the Umayyad dynasty. Real quick side note, when Muawiyah takes over as caliph, the reason we have that really redefined split is the fact that he appoints his son Yazid. Yazid takes over from Muawiyah, even though Muawiyah had made a deal with Hassan. When Hassan abdicated the throne, or the title of caliph, Muawiyah appoints his son, even though he said he would not do that. And Yazid was not a nice fella. So again, that kind of deals with that strict application of Islamic ideas under the rule of Muawiyah and Yazid. But it does begin to loosen as we move into the future. Okay, Umayyad decline. So because the Umayyads really start to spread out, they kind of overextend themselves. Again, that's one of those things that we see as a trend in civilizations. We see lots of revolts, in particular an Abbasid revolt led by Merv. This is a revolt against the Umayyads, and basically this revolt kind of stems from the idea that they are not applying the laws and the rules of the faith strictly enough. And in 750, the Battle of the River Zab occurs, and the Umayyads are defeated by the Abbasids. The Abbasids, again, very similar to how the Umayyads went up against Ali. The Abbasids will come up against the Umayyads, but the Abbasids are distinctly from the northwestern region of the Caliphate, and they rise up against the Umayyads and overthrow the Umayyads. So when this happens, what we're going to see is a generic trend to push towards kind of a syncretism between the new Abbasid Caliphate and Persian culture, because of the fact the Abbasids are located in the previous Persian Empire, the Sassanid Empire. They have a tendency to be more accepting of Zoroastrianism, and they also have a tendency to be more accepting of Persian architecture, customs, art, etc. So we do see a syncretism of the Abbasid Empire and Persia. All right, let's take a look at a mosque. Hopefully you guys have seen pictures of mosques. This is a mosque in Pakistan. Again, this would have been established by the Abbasid Empire. And wait, I misspoke, guys. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Yes, but as we can see, Pakistan is at the far northwest corner of the Abbasid Empire near Afghanistan, and we can see that Islam becomes a focal point for people in this region. And still to this day, you will find strongholds for, say, the Taliban, which is a very strict order of Islam. A lot of them are located here in Pakistan or in neighboring Afghanistan. Okay, and by the 8th and the 15th century, we start to see all sorts of injection of Islamic culture into even Cordoba. We're going to talk about how that works and where Cordoba is at here in just a second. All right, one more time. Women did have valued roles in society before we see Islam. Now, when Islam is injected into this Middle Eastern region, we start to see women's rights being taken away. Even though they enjoyed some freedoms in the the early to mid Umayyad Caliphate, they will not continue this trend, unfortunately. So some of the limitations that will be placed on women, in particular towards the tail end of the Umayyad and the beginning of the Abbasid Caliphate, we will see kind of a more strict adherence to veiling in public, and kind of a general subjectification of women by this new Abbasid Caliphate. So it's important to note the trend of women gets worse as we transition from the Umayyad into the Abbasid. There are a few things that women are allowed to continue to do. They're continued to study and learn the Quran, but they are not allowed to learn anything other than the Quran. In fact, My Name is Malala is a book about a girl that educated herself and then was attacked by the Taliban. This is an example of how some Islamic sects really look down on the education of women, but education in the sense of the Quran was allowed. Women were allowed to inherit from their husbands if the husband died. They were allowed to divorce, and they were allowed to remarry. But overall, that was pretty much the extent of the privileges women had. They were no longer allowed to involve in business. They were no longer allowed to practice law, etc. Okay, so let's look at the escape of the Umayyads. All right. So after the Battle of the River Zab, what we see is the capital city of Damascus was attacked by the Abbasids, and then it was captured by the Abbasids. Any Umayyad that was in the area fled. They fled south and west into Africa. All right. The very last survivor of the Umayyad Caliphate makes this travel across North Africa. This region is called Ifriqa, which is kind of that northern region that's not the Maghreb. The Maghreb is right here, okay? But this surviving group of Umayyads will travel across the Straits of Gibraltar and into a city in Spain called Cordoba or Cordova. It's the same city, sometimes spelled with a V or a D. But it is here that they establish the Caliphate of Cordoba, or the Cordoba Caliphate. Basically, it is the Umayyad Caliphate that has been displaced by the Abbasids. And in this region of Spain, or the Iberian Peninsula as it's referred to, Spain and Portugal, in this region, the Muslims there are actually able to live in harmony with Jews and Christians for quite some time. In fact, it won't be until we see something called the Reconquista of 1492, led by the Spanish throne, that we have disintegrating relations between the Muslims of Spain or Cordoba and the Christians of Christian Spain and Christian Portugal. Okay. Moving on. All right, so the Sunni repressed the Shia. The Abbasids in the early era were Sunni, and they still repressed that sect of Islam. And in particular, guys, this is kind of why the Shia still to this day are a very small sect in the Islamic world. Okay, they moved the capital from Damascus to Baghdad. Baghdad is in Iraq. So the capital gets moved much farther to the east, and the Abbasids install a governmental position called a wazir, or sometimes it's called a vizier, V-I-Z-I-E-R. And basically, this is like the chief minister or representative of the caliph. And basically, this position will continue throughout much of the history of certain countries in the Middle East. All right. So, again, the conversion and the expansion of the empire is continued, and Mawali, those are their converts. And what we do see is people that convert under the Abbasid Caliphate, they actually are received with full acceptance. But those that do not, unfortunately, they do have some persecution. So But we do see mostly peaceful conversion under the early Abbasids. There is a large appeal of the Islamic faith to those people that had been oppressed by the Persians or that were not happy with the previous Bedouin religions. Okay, moving on. Trade and commerce. All right, so what we see is Arabs have always been known throughout history as very adept and shrewd traders. And this is really where we start to see trading explode in and around the Middle East, which includes the Mediterranean and also the Indian Ocean, all the way from India up and down the coast of East Africa. We'll also see them venture into Southeast Asia, like the South China Sea, etc. So, one of the things that allows this to happen is the dhow. The dhow is a ship with a triangular sail called a lateen sail. These vessels usually stayed fairly close to shore. Again, we don't have a lot of that technology yet that will allow us to travel overseas. That will come soon. We also see an agricultural expansion, basically by establishing trade and increasing the size of the empire and the trading with surrounding empires and kingdoms. The Abbasids are able to start to pull in lots and lots of foodstuffs from outside of their fairly dry region, and that allows for a population surge. We see lots of trading ventures with Jews and Gentiles, Christians. One of the things that we also see is the development of a 7-day-a-week work week because of differing Sabbath days. These different religions, oftentimes their Sabbath day or their holy day fell on different days of the week. So what we see is business being conducted 7 days a week, which actually gives them an advantage. They're working and trading all day, every day. Okay, we do see expansion of urban areas also. Excuse me. And we see the development of a group of people called the Ayan. The Ayan, and there's a picture of the Ayan right here. This is the elite upper class of this new urban Abbasid caliphate. All right. Again, I'll let you guys peruse through these. It's good to look at these images. This is the Great Mosque or Shah Mosque at Isfahan, Iran. And it is an absolutely gorgeous mosque. We have another picture of it later. It's a beautiful mosque, very blue, lots of golds, and it is absolutely beautiful. But it was built during this medieval period. This is a picture of the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia, or ironically, was originally a Christian stronghold built by the Byzantines. Very, very beautiful church, but was captured by the Ottomans in 1453 and turned into a mosque. But you can see there's some elements that are very Romanesque, that are very, very Byzantine, but then you also have large discs with Arabic writing on it. And what we also see is the minbar. The minbar is a pulpit from which Muslim holy men will preach. Okay. This was an early blueprint of a mosque. Let you guys peruse that. This is Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is located in Jerusalem, and it is the third holiest site of Islam. And again, guys, Jerusalem, which is the focal point of both the Jewish and the Christian faith. Okay? So again, Abrahamic connections. One of the other characteristics is a Qibla wall. The Qibla wall usually is signified with this really, it's a pointed arc, which is unique to the, fairly unique to the Muslim community. But you can see very intricate mosaics and tile work. Again, always facing Mecca. All right. So one of the things that we do see, and this will be it for the second part of chapter 7, we see this new caliphate, this Abbasid caliphate, become the seat of learning basically for the entire world. Keep in mind that most of Europe at the time is going through a period of time called the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages. And it's a stagnant period for Europeans where they're just kind of stuck. China, on the other hand, is booming with the Sang and the Tong. We'll talk about them a little bit later in this unit. But we see lots of mosques being built and palaces being built, lots and lots of spending, and that also gets the Abbasids into some trouble. But we do see the preservation of learning. Baghdad, the city of Baghdad, Iraq, becomes a focal point for learning, and not just learning, and not just Muslims. What we see Baghdad becoming a center of collection of Greek and Roman antiquities, sculptures from ancient Carthage and Egypt. The Islamic scholars basically see the value in recruiting and collecting from different parts of the world, and they start to bring in scholars and the best minds from all over the world, and they bring them together in Baghdad, and Baghdad really kind of becomes what we call the Islamic Renaissance. And it's where we see a preservation of pretty much all learning throughout the world, and a lot of scientific and um, other innovative type breakthroughs occur during this time period in the middle of the Abbasid Caliphate inside that capital city. Okay, guys, that's it. Next time we'll pick up with chapter 8 and talk about the decline of the Abbasids, as well as the spread of Islam into India as well as Southeast Asia. All right, stay tuned.